This is a photograph of an animal that you've probably never seen before. You only get to see this one picture and only at this angle. Yet somehow, before you've even realized you're doing it, your brain has already imagined what the other side looks like. It has imagined how the animal walks, how it runs, how it sits, perhaps even how its offsprings might look like. None of that information exists in the photograph, so where did it come from?
It's imagination.
It's imagination.
That's what's called imagination, dummy.
Imagination doesn't explain the mechanism. Imagination is the word that describes the resulting process of that mechanism. So the question again is, where did that extra information about this animal that you've never seen before come from? The fact that your brain can do this doesn't seem particularly remarkable. We do this every day. So often, in fact, that we never stop to question it. But if you really think about it, such things should not be possible.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, see, the photograph never showed you what the animal looks like from behind. It never showed you how its muscles moves or how its legs bent. It certainly didn't show you what its offsprings might look like. Yet your mind quietly filled in all of those missing pieces. If you say that the brain is simply making a calculated guess, then you're close, but not quite close. It's actually doing something much more sophisticated. It's predicting.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yep, and that single difference may explain one of the greatest distinctions between natural intelligence and artificial intelligence as we know it today. Most people imagine that the brain works like a camera. Light enters your eyes, the brain records what it sees, job done.
Well, what else is there?
Neuroscience increasingly suggests that's almost the opposite of what's really happening. One of the most influential ideas in modern neuroscience is that your brain is not waiting for reality to arrive. It's constantly trying to predict what reality is about to be. Every face, every object, every next moment. Rather than constructing the world from scratch every time, it begins with expectations, then checks whether reality agrees. Most of the time, it does.
Well, thank God for that.
Remember, you only saw a single photograph taken from one angle, yet somehow you imagine the rest. Why? Because your brain has spent your entire life quietly learning the rules of the physical world. It understands gravity, symmetry, skeletons, muscles, perspective, and motion. Long before you ever saw this animal, your brain had already built an internal model of reality.
I knew I had it in me.
So when new information appears, it doesn't start learning from zero. It simply asks, given everything that I already know, what is most likely true? Now, this ability isn't limited to recognizing animals. It appears almost everywhere. Imagine a person who's never played chess before. You explain the rules and how each piece moves, and then they play about 10 games to practice. By the 11th game, they will understand the game well enough to avoid making any illegal moves. In fact, they might even be good enough to beat another novice player.
Sure, I'm a natural.
Now compare that with one of the most powerful chess engines ever built, AlphaZero. If AlphaZero had only been given the rules of the game and allowed to play just 10 practice games, by the 11th game, it would still be hopelessly terrible. It would have barely had begun to discover even the most fundamental strategies, and even though it would know what winning is from its core programming, it would have no concept of how to try and achieve a win. But today, no human alive can come even close to beating AlphaZero. It's simply in a different league now. But it's reached this peak ability through brute force. Not 10 games, not 100 games, not even 100,000, but millions. AlphaZero became the grand master of chess engines only after playing roughly 44 million games against itself.
Whoa, that's a lot of games, yo!
The destination was extraordinary, but the journey was completely different. Why did AlphaZero require so many games, you may ask? The reason isn't that humans are inherently smarter. It's because humans don't learn chess from scratch. Think about everything you already know before your very first chess lesson. Taking turns, the concept of rules, goals, spatial reasoning, planning ahead, competition. and intentional opponent. You bring decades of cognitive machinery to the board. AlphaZero starts with none of that. It only knows the literal syntax of the rules. Everything else has to emerge through experience.
Oh, that's tough.
Let us take that comparison one step further. Suppose that halfway through your first chess game, somebody introduces a completely new piece. They call it the dragon. They tell you that the dragon moves 2 squares diagonally and then 1 square sideways. And that is all the information that you receive. You would not immediately understand the strategic consequence of the dragon, but within moments, you could begin using it. You could identify what it attacks, recognize when it is threatened, use it to defend another piece, and begin adjusting your strategy around it. Your brain would take one sentence and weave it into an entire system of existing knowledge. Humans are astonishingly flexible. AlphaZero could not do the same. Before it could even use the piece, it would first need to be re-engineered so that it could represent this dragon piece, recognize its legal moves, and incorporate it into the game. Only then could it begin learning how to use the piece effectively, probably through thousands of more games of try and error. This is not because AlphaZero is weak. At conventional chess, it is superhuman. But AlphaZero mastered one precisely defined game. The human mind learned how to understand games.
I was born ready.
Artificial intelligence learns in a very different way. During training, today's most capable AI systems are exposed to enormous quantities of text, images, audio, and video. They become remarkably good at recognizing patterns across that data. They have also now improved at being able to make inferences across things they've never seen exactly before. But in general, they still require far more experience than a human child to achieve the same level of flexible understanding. Researchers call this sample efficiency. Humans are extraordinary sample efficient. We can learn a lot from very little information, whereas AI systems need a lot of information to learn a little. Children can sometimes learn a new concept from just 1 or 2 examples. AI often needs vast amounts of examples more, not because it's unintelligent, but because it is learning differently. Why would evolution build a brain like this? The answer is simple. Biological beings have to optimize for energy and time. Your brain runs on roughly 20 watts of power.
Is that it?
It cannot afford to calculate every possibility from first principles every second, so evolution found a better solution. Predict first, correct later. Most of the time, prediction is good enough. That makes human intelligence incredibly fast, but it also explains something else. Why we experience optical illusions, why eyewitnesses disagree, and why expectations shape perception. Sometimes the brain predicts incorrectly.
That explains a lot, actually.
Artificial intelligence may eventually become far more knowledgeable than any human being. It may perform calculations no person could ever complete. It may analyze information with extraordinary speed, but researchers are still trying to build something that humans develop naturally. A rich internal model of the world that allows flexible reasoning from remarkably little information. Some believe this is the next frontier of AI. Not simply more data, but better understanding. Remember that photograph from the beginning? We still haven't answered the most important question. Where did the missing half of the animal actually come from? The photograph didn't contain it. Your eyes never saw it. So why did your mind become so certain that it existed? And the answer is simple. It came from you. It came from decades of quietly learning how reality behaves. The photograph merely triggered a prediction. Your mind supplied the rest. That's what your brain has evolved to do. Not merely record reality, but predict it every second of every day, which leaves us with one intriguing possibility. Perhaps intelligence isn't measured by how much information you can store, but by how much of reality you can correctly imagine before you ever experience it. And maybe that's the ability artificial intelligence is still learning to acquire.